almost like two sides to the debate, pro and con migration, and neither of them can be realistic about the contribution. So you get people who sort of say, oh, it doesn't matter whether we have any migrants, we can have zero and the economy will still be fine. That's almost certainly not true. But it's also not true that they are the lifeblood of the economy and without them, the entire economy would collapse. Again, only 15% of people were born abroad. Are we really saying that without those 15% of people, the other 85% of people would suddenly sit around and do nothing and produce nothing? That Brits just can't do anything unless there's a migrant there to help them along in their jobs? The reality is, and it's sort of it's boring and it's kind of non-headline grabbing, is migrants by and large are just like us. They're about as productive as we are. They're about as good as their jobs as we are. There'll be some migrants who are really great at their job. There'll be some who you wish you'd never employed. That's just, they're nothing very exciting relative to us. Therefore, when we talk often about migration, all we're talking about is, do we make the economy and the population bigger or smaller? And so if we get more migrants coming in, we have a bigger population, the economy will be bigger, but none of us will individually be much better off per person. It's just the economy's bigger. And there are some advantages to that, from a fiscal perspective. If the economy is bigger, then, our debt to GDP ratio goes down because GDP goes up. And initially, at least the debt doesn't change. So that's kind of helps a bit. But it's sort of not, the reason for that is actually quite straightforward. It's that we're an advanced economy. We're one of the most successful economies. People forget this, but we are one of the most successful economies in the world. Our GDP per person is very high relative to the vast majority of countries. Perhaps not as high as we want it to be, but we are in the elite group of advanced economies. It's quite difficult to get migration that can fundamentally change that productivity, our innovation, because we're already doing really well there. Relatively. It's much easier if you're a really poor country to use migration to help you grow really fast because you can bring in lots of skills that you really don't have. So if you're a poor country, you actually can really benefit from bringing in really high skilled people that your economy can't really train themselves because you don't have, massive amounts of universities or that kind of thing. And so you can actually bring those people in and they can really stimulate growth and entrepreneurship and the like. It's much harder to do when you're in the UK where, we've got, 3 or 4 of the top 10 universities are in the UK. We're already producing lots of great graduates and everything. Does that mean that we can't get a really great French graduate? Yeah, we will be able to. And sometimes they'll be better than a British graduate, but often they'll just be exactly the same. And so, that can't help us grow very fast. And so, there are real benefits to bringing in migrants, but we shouldn't overstate them. The one thing I would say is that one area where you do see a clear benefit is on our main work route, the skilled worker route into the UK. One area you see an awful lot of is we do bring in lots of really very highly paid people from abroad. And here, I think there is an element of, we take advantage of the fact that London in particular is a major financial and business center in the world and actually brings in lots of people from New York, from Singapore, from kind of Tokyo, lots of different places where actually we're bringing in really high paying workers. They're not displacing British workers. It's just that they're adding to that massive kind of very high paid work. And that brings in really significant tax revenues. So there is a real point at the sort of the top of the distribution of people we're bringing in are really helping from a fiscal perspective relative to the average.
And that